Hi guys, this is Karthik from Caapid Simplified. I'm joined by Dr. Noora and a special guest who's been one of our biggest advocates and fans of Caapid Simplified, Dr. Nikita Rungta. Um, we are here to discuss and help you guys with some tips on how you can improve your TOEFL scores, be better prepared for exams, and get through this difficult phase of proving how good your communicative English is to US dental school admissions committees. Given that, let me take a quick segue and ask Dr. Nikita to introduce herself. Nikita, over to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Nikita and I completed my dental school BDS from Manipal College of Dental Sciences, Mangalore in September 2018. Since then, I've been working here in the same city and I've also been preparing for the journey of becoming an international dentist in the United States. So yeah, that's pretty much. And
Sure.
yeah, I've given the TOEFL exam, and yeah, I'm happy to talk about my experiences on that. And thank you very much for this opportunity to get on in a video with you guys. Like the page is amazing, and all of you should follow it. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the positive endorsement. It's definitely a pleasure to have new faces join us as we help more dental students. Recently, we kind of repurposed Caapid Simplified to focus on not making any profit, but to actually use the money we make from Caapid Simplified to help other students with their dental admissions. So it's become from not for profit to non-profit right now, which is great. Okay, given that, let's quickly jump into what's very useful for our viewers. Can you take a minute and probably explain to us what the TOEFL test format is?
Okay. So firstly, TOEFL is a very important English exam, which is required by almost all the US universities for every course, and specifically for the course that we are applying for the DDS and DMD. So the test format, it basically consists of 4 sections, which includes the reading section, speaking, listening, and writing. So all these 3 sections have a few questions, you and yeah, you basically have to finish all the 4 sections, and you don't know your score at the spot, but you later find out. And they also have an option to send it to the universities. So yeah, and all these 4 formats, they have different question types under each of them as well.
Sure. What is the cost for the test, Nikita?
um, I think when I gave it last year, so it's been almost a year. It was $180.
Okay. And how many schools can you send it to while in the test?
I think it was 3 to 4 schools.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
not sure if it's been updated
Sure.
right
No
now.
issues. So I guess we'll have to pay schools if we have to send it outside the test. But if we
Yeah,
choose the schools
definitely.
while in the test, we don't have to pay for those three, four
Hmm.
schools. So a good choice would be to decide which schools you're going to apply to, and then take the test
Hmm.
so that you can save on the extra $100 that you will spend in sending it.
Also, it's always better to give the test right before the application cycle starts, like not very close to it, but somewhat close to it, so that your test scores remain valid for a longer time. The validity is 2 years. So if you give two way ahead, then you might have to give it again by the time the school starts or something or the else. So I gave mine in February 2019, and the cycle started in March.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Now, if you could, discuss a little bit about the examination day. You took your test at a center, and I guess COVID-19 is going
Mhm.
to change that for a couple of students. Nevertheless, COVID will eventually pass and students will get to go back to centers. So if you could
Mhm.
speak a little bit about your experience, that would be something we could relate to and learn from.
Okay. So yeah, the testing center experience was good. You have to remember that when you go for the test, not all the people, test takers, are giving the same exam. There are people who are giving GRE or various other exams as well. So important things to remember is that there is going to be distraction at the test center, which you have to be ready for. So it's always a good idea to practice while there is some distraction, even at home. So when you practice for listening or speaking, especially for listening, because if you all of a sudden go to the center and you realize there's so much noise with people speaking, because everybody's time is going to differ. So at that point, you should not get distracted. So it's always a good idea to at least do one or two practice runs with some distraction in the background at home.
I completely agree. My own experience taking TOEFL was similarly frustrating because the noise cancelling headphones weren't exactly noise cancelling. And in fact, I could hear people typing on the keyboard so fast that it was a very big distraction for me. So that's a great tip, and I think that'll be useful for us. So now that you've spoken about the exam day experience and a little bit about your background, can you tell us what preparation made you score that 110 in TOEFL? And what can people also learn from that and use in their own application process?
Okay. So I think I started with first I went through the official TOEFL website. They have a lot of amazing resources and guides to help you go through the whole process from, how to start to how to be prepared for the main day with what to carry and some practice tests. Also, the exam pattern very well explained. So my first suggestion would be to go to the official ETS TOEFL website and go through all the free resources that they have. I did not purchase any additional resource, but if you feel that you want to, you can. There are some practice tests and extra books that you can purchase. Apart from that, the second, once this was done, the second resource that I went to was the Noteful YouTube videos. So they are a set of, it's a page, and they have really good videos on strategically, answering questions on TOEFL. So that's good. So that's something that's going to help you for the exam per se, because they give you strategies on how to go about all three sections, like proper formats and everything. You do not have to follow everything, but then once you see his videos, you're going to get a very good idea on how to navigate through each question and go about it.
All right. Did you refer to any books within outside of these, outside online?
No, I think TOEFL website and Noteful were my only sources.
Okay.
Apart from that, I just found this book last year, which I go through once in a while. It's Word Power, and it's a very popular book by Norman Lewis, and you can just keep. So this is for long term. Like you, even if your exam is after a year and you're watching this video, you can just get this book and flip through the pages and keep building your vocabulary. They always help. Um, so yeah, for the long term, to do well on these English tests, do something that helps you with your vocabulary, with how you speak, communication, everything. So
Perfect. So maybe two quick questions is, where would you rate your English skills before TOEFL preparation? As in, how good were you already? And then how long did you prepare for the TOEFL test?
I think obviously I've definitely improved. If before TOEFL, my English was 6 out of 10. Right now, I could say it's probably 7.58. And my preparation, I think I prepared for 2 to 3 weeks, like definitely 3 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So 3 weeks, that's super nice to know that you prepared within 3 weeks. That's probably the most of the time that people have prepare for the TOEFL test. On average, how many hours per week would you have invested in preparation?
Mm, I was working at that time, so I must have put around between three to 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Awesome. All right,
Mm-hmm.
that's good. Can you tell us about? I mean, you spoke about the material that you used to prepare, but can you tell us about how you prepared? Is there a certain process that you used, certain times, tips, guidelines like that? Anything that what's the process of preparation?
Um, so yeah, the first thing is to understand what the test is all about. So, um, first, you go to the TOEFL official website and try to understand the format and understand it completely. That the that the first section that's going to come is the reading section. It's going to have these many questions, and then this is the time that you're going to have. then the next section is going to be something else, and you understand the format very well. So that's the first step, and how much time you're going to get. So one thing I realized during preparation was that time was a very important factor for TOEFL. So during the whole preparation, I kept that in mind, and eventually, when I was doing practice tests, I could, understand better where I was taking more time. So I think that's something that you definitely have to keep in mind while preparing. That's time.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Apart from that, yeah. So, towards the end, once I was um, acquainted with the whole format of how to answer and everything else, I took a few practice tests. ETS TOEFL website has a few PDFs that you can download and see the sample questions. I think they've given answers in some as well that you can note. And yeah, you can practice when you're doing the speaking practice. You can record yourself and then see how much time you took, and hear how you're speaking. Um, so pretty much that. I think from my experience during the test, listening was the most difficult for me, like I said, because of the distractions. And that's where I scored a little lower than the others. So yeah, I would say give some extra importance to that section.
Okay. Do you have any tips for students who are applying and are not very fluent with English? Like your spoken English is definitely among the better of candidates. So kudos to that. But if somebody who is predominantly practicing in their vernacular language and interacting with patients, do you have any tips for them to kind of breach the barrier? And at least I think most students struggle with speaking section. So do you have any tips for that?
Yes, I would say get the strategy correct. Like every question that you're gonna get is going to be in a particular format, and how you answer that question, there is a format to that. You have to first mention some. Yeah, I can actually go through my notes and give some tips on that. Just a second. So generally, the speaking consists of, so first question is an open-ended question. So they can just want you to talk about anything like a common topic, and then you have to like Noteful has explained it very well. So you have to go according to a format. So something like, in my view, this is what I think about this, and then my first reason for this is this, and then my second reason is this. So similarly, all the other questions, you just need to follow a strategy. Like even if your spoken English is not that great, it's fine. It's nothing to worry about, because the TOEFL exam is more of strategy than how you speak. So
Sure.
definitely, yeah.
That's wonderful. Do you have any other interesting insights from your notes that we can discuss? I'm sure you put a lot of research into this call. So, and while Nikita pulls this up, I just have like a suggestion from my own days preparing for the TOEFL. Uh, so I used to speak predominantly in my vernacular language when I was in my 11th and 12th, and I had to take my TOEFL a couple of years later. All through undergrad, I did not use English at all, except for, of course, writing examinations. So it was a bit of a struggle 3 years ago when I had to take the TOEFL test. One thing that helped me and continues to help me is watching CNN IBN news channel. I mean, now there are several English news channels. I would watch these news channels for a minute, and after a minute, I would put the TV on mute and try to repeat what the anchor just said. So I did this rigorously for like around a 60-day period, and that was the probably the biggest boost for me improving my communicative English. So if students generally do have a lot of time in hand, especially if they have a 60-day window between now and the TOEFL test, they could swap out those videos that they're watching on YouTube with something where at least the key narrator of that video is speaking in English. Try to put it on mute at occasional pauses, and then try to speak like the narrator. And very, very quickly, by mere imitation, you will pick up communicative English. In fact, I also learned later that communicative English actually comes through imitation. That's why we more often speak like our parents, our teachers, or like our community neighbors. So if you would swap your community neighbor with that YouTube narrator's voice, irrespective of what video it is, you might actually become very, very strong at imitating them and eventually making that your own style of English.
That's a great
Okay,
thing. That's really cool.
okay, cool. Thank you. Back to your notes. Happy to hear more insights.
Yeah, some more general tips that I have for the day, apart from, yeah, be prepared for the noise. Then you're gonna get some sheets that you are going to be working on to take down your notes. So be prepared to, like, save space and write. Don't fill up the sheets, because you cannot always ask for those additional sheets on the
Mhm.
day of the exam, except for after the break. So that is one thing. And yeah, you're going to get a 10-minute break after your reading and listening section. So because you've not been speaking during these two sections, it's a good idea for you to just practice speaking during your 10-minute break. So whatever is on your screen, or if you're heading out for a break, just like speak something, so that you are um, ready to go ahead and do the speaking section. So that's something that I did as well. um, yeah, I think it.
Okay. Any tips for the writing section? Did you like think of some words beforehand, or did you use any strategy from?
Um, Yeah, for the writing section, I would say once so you're given a lot of passages, and they are not very short. They are somehow medium length. So what I used to do is I would skim through the passage. I wouldn't read each and every word as soon as I saw the passage. So just the first statements of all the paragraphs, and then I would jump to the questions and read all the questions at once. Now I would again go to the first question, and then when I saw the question, I would try to visualize, like, if I remembered the answer. If I did not, I would go to the paragraph again and look for keywords which would go with the question, and just read that part of the paragraph. You won't have a lot of time to read everything with full concentration. So whatever, so it has to be very quick. So yes, first step is skimming the whole thing, then reading all the questions and keeping them in mind. And then per question, you go back to the paragraph and just look for the keywords, and then just read one sentence before the statement where the keywords are, and one after, and you're pretty much going to find the answer there.
Perfect. That is amazing. So what Dr. Nikita's suggestions is to like just skim and see superficially what it is, pick out your keywords, and then revisit your keywords as in when you want to elaborate on the question's answer. Very useful. Again, another recurrent theme that she's brought up is the idea of time boxing. So time is a big constraint. It's not just your communicative ability. Therefore, even while practice, if you can time box yourself and set yourself to a more restrictive time within which you have to finish the practice test, you would be better off in the actual exam when there's an added pressure of performance. We have Dr. Noora joining us, and happy to hear any tips from your own experience, Dr. Noora.
Hi, Nikita. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sorry I'm joining a little late.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, so we were just briefly discussing and jamming on ideas of how students can improve their TOEFL scores, and Nikita has done that in 3 weeks. Do you have any tips from your own experience you can share?
From my own experience, for TOEFL, I think it's a very strategic test. There's nothing that you need to be afraid of. It's I felt like it was just a play, and I had to prepare for it and just perform my part during the exam. So I'll just tell you what I did in each sections very briefly. I don't want to be repetitive. I know that with Kaarthik and Nikita, a lot of their techniques match with the techniques that I use. For reading, I usually just skim through the passage. I don't read it all. I feel like a mistake that everybody does is reading through everything and then kind of forgetting where we were at. So what I do is when I read the question, I see what they're asking for, and then I search the passage for that particular word. And when that word strikes, that's where my answer is. So I start reading that particular paragraph a little more thoroughly, and I find the answer in that paragraph. That saves me time. That's how I approach reading questions. The very tricky part of the reading question is the last ones, where they ask you to choose a particular thing. That's where you might get confused, and you might want to quickly read the passage to find out the theme of the whole thing, which mostly you'll understand by the time you reach that question, because they'll make you cover all the paragraphs. That's reading. And you know that you can come back to the reading questions before you leave that section. So if you're not sure of a particular answer, just mark it and go back and come back to it later. You don't have to break your head over it in the beginning. The second section is speaking or listening?
I don't.
Okay, speaking.
Listening, I think.
Listening, okay. Listening, yeah, listening, you want to listen pretty thoroughly. I usually quickly jot down the points, what I listen to, and then I start answering the question. Listening is quite easy if you can, if you write fast. That's how I do it. I write fast, I start making points, and then according to that, I answer the question. Speaking is a little different. Of course, I followed the source that Nikita did on YouTube, which is Noteful. I thought it was very helpful because they kind of give you a skeleton around which you can prepare your speaking phrases, and you just have to listen to what they're saying and then fill in the gaps and just read it out of your paper. That's what I did. And the phrases, what were there in my paper, I started writing it down before the beginning of my exam, so that I already had it on paper. That was it. That's what I did for speaking. For writing, I heard what Nikita said, so I'll just add to what she's saying. So it's important that you don't spend a lot of time reading the passage, which they give you first for the first writing exercise. Just read the first line of all the paragraphs, which gives you an idea about the theme. And then what you want to do is you want to pay attention to the listening aspect of the writing, where they give you an audio. Because you cannot go back to the audio, but you can go back to the reading. You'll have the phrase in front of you. You'll have the paragraph in front of you. So you don't have to, memorize that. But do pay attention to the listening part of it. And then you start writing. So for the first exercise, you're going to contradict, you're going to support. That's how you're going to write the writing one. But I think the challenging part of the writing exercise is the second exercise, where you have to do it by yourself, where it's an open-ended question. Or for example, they ask you, what does friendship mean to you? Or something like that. So the way you approach that question is, I feel like the 300 to 350 or 300 to 400 words will be optimum. You don't have to go beyond that. And probably 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs, 4 being the conclusion paragraph. So that would be how I would approach writing. So that's the gist of how I did it. So.
All right. Thank you for that. Another tip that I could share from experience is for listening, where you have to take quick notes and write things down. I'm like the stereotypical Indian doctor where I can't understand my own writing if I write fast. So I would just draw, whatever comes to mind, I would just draw a quick image, like a human, and then put heads, this thing, so that I can remember exactly what was the topic. I can stick figures, I can draw super fast and put that. It might be useful for people. An alternative thing which I've seen people do, and sorry to say this, that I've been peeking at other people's notes, but I've seen people write in Malayalam and other languages to quickly keep up with the pace of listening. So if you are okay with writing another language, this is probably going to be useful for you. Do not hesitate. It's your notes. Nobody cares. Yeah.
Also, just one thing what I wanted to add was, so I think with TOEFL, when things get difficult is when you're trying to make sense of what you're saying. You don't have to make sense of what you're saying. What they're trying to see is, are you fluent? Are you able to think on the spot and say something and you're not stuttering? Are you able to have command over your language? So when you are doing the speaking section, the first 2 parts, even if your example doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't matter. It just matters how you frame that sentence.
Do you recall any question that you got through speaking?
Yeah, I do. There was one question that it's like, do you prefer to study at home or in a library?
All right. So, Nikita, do you want to take this question and try answering it?
Sure. Can I refer my notes for it?
Of course, yeah. You can take a second while trying to answer it. Just one quick segue as Nikita kind of prepares the answer is thinking about COVID-19. Obviously, you're not going to go to a center and take the test. So how do you prepare? If you have taken the Casper test for different universities, you basically would have had e-proctoring, where somebody is observing you take the test through a webcam. that's the same way these new TOEFL tests are going to take place, where somebody will be observing you over a webcam, you will be proctoring you, and you'll be taking it at home. The advantage is that you will not have the same noise and chatter and distraction that you would have at a center when there are 100 students taking the test and typing on the keyboard at the very same time. So that works in your favor. Just make sure that as much as noise can be a distraction, silence does not distract you. If it distracts you, then keep something in the background to keep you focused on the test itself. I personally find silence very distracting and struggle with it. So I would much rather do well with noise, but it's up to you guys. Yeah. Okay. So now that we've taken the segue, back to you, Nikita. The question was, do you prefer to study at home or in a library?
Okay, so I would start by saying, in my view, studying in the library is better than studying at home. The first reason for that is when you study in the library, there are so many of your colleagues and other students around you who are studying, which creates a perfect atmosphere for you to, concentrate on what you're doing. And the second reason would be that, yeah, the silence and the availability of so many books in the library always adds to the information that you already are studying, and you're in a place where you have easy resource for every topic that you are going to study.
Perfect. So you basically gave your opinion first, and then you substantiate that opinion with 3 points to add on. Is that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's pretty much the end of our session. We've given a lot of tips to our viewers, and hopefully they take use of it. If you still have questions about how do you improve on TOEFL, Caapid Simplified does not help students with TOEFL per se, but nevertheless, we're happy to answer your questions through the WhatsApp link that's available in our description. In closing, let's listen to Dr. Nora or Nikita if they have anything to share, and then we can close the call.
I don't have anything in specific. I just want you all to practice a lot, especially with I think the things that make you spend a lot of time is reading sections. Try to use this technique of not reading the whole passage and trying to skim through and finding answers. And of course, with speaking, trying to find something on the spot. That's what's difficult for a lot of people, that one. And of course, listening, you can try Kaarthik's technique where you try to draw something and, that saves you time, or try to write it in your language. If you're finding it difficult to follow it, write it in English. That's also one technique. Nothing to be afraid of. It's, as I said, it's all strategy and a lot of practice.
Nikita, do you have anything to say in closing?
Yeah, I would like to just say the same things, that if you have a lot of time before the test, don't worry about the exam, work on your English. Like you said, the news channel watching, or even watching American movies and TV series on Netflix. I think that's something that helps us too. So if you have a lot of months, read a lot, talk to people in English, watch all of this. So that's going to help you. And then just before the exam, definitely work on the strategy of the exam, and everything else will be taken care of.
Yeah. Just one last tip for people who are going to take TOEFL after the lockdown lifts and they start giving exams. Just don't bother about people who are next to you and who are typing fast, typing loudly or like screaming. I always feel like I'm the only person in the room. So I'm one of those annoying people who speak loudly. I think it's very important you do that because you want to be clear in your microphone. You don't know how your voice is being received on the other side. So you don't want to lose points just because you're not loud enough. Right? Mm-hmm. I've seen people who speak very slowly into the mic so they don't disturb other people. That's very kind, but it's going to affect your points. So just speak confidently, loudly, and you'll be able to get through it.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thank you so much. And
thank you, Nikita, for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. If you're going to improve your English through watching Netflix or TV series, please do not use subtitles, because we are so programmed reading our books so fast through 5 years of the industry that reading is easy for us. It's the trying to understand this into an American accent, which we find difficult. So no subtitles, and therefore no caption on this video too. Thank you, Nikita, and see you.
Yeah, bye-bye.